let's just start again. We got the Sketch 360 show going on here, everybody. The Sketch 360 show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DG360. We are in Star Citizen After Dark mode, having a good time. You got to join us here every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. We're going to be watching a video by SpaceTomato here. What is Star Citizen in 2024? Will they meet their 12-month goal?
2024 has proven to be a different kind of year for Star Citizen. A multitude of improvements introduced last year are in the game. Server meshing has proven a functional system. The studios in general seem more in step with each other, though still have some issues. Squadron 42 is a tangible possibility, and the player-facing side of the game, the part we actually play and care about, seems to have been getting some much-needed direction compared to before. From major shifts at the top of the company to the very pillars of Star Citizen finally showing face, it's a big year for the game and a big proving ground. But are they sticking to their beginning of the year promises? And even if the year is different, does that mean that Star Citizen is going in the direction players want? First today, we'll look at why Star Citizen is different in 2024, then we'll check out how it's actually playing different as of June. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk.
It'll be playing different when server meshing, or the first iteration of it, dynamic server meshing, gets us where we need it to be. And that brings stability. When that stability comes in, that is where I want to see it go. Stability.
One thing that has become clear to many following Star Citizen is that they are pushing for faster progress. This is made most apparent by Richard Tyrer, essentially second in command of Star Citizen, when earlier this year he emphasized a push to get more of what they've been talking about actually into players' hands.
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at Star Citizen itself, I want it to be a cohesive experience that is all tied together. And I want to get there as soon as possible. I want somebody to be able to play the game and understand all the things that they have available to them. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of gameplay already in the game, but it's in isolated pockets. It's like, if you want to just be a miner, great, you can go and do mining, you can do that loop, but I want the connections. I want the interwebbing. That's the difference between features and content and a game. And I want to push towards that as quickly as possible.
Well said.
Generally sounds like marketing speak, but this has proven fairly true this year. A multitude of changes were
I felt the passion in that. That didn't feel like marketing speak to me.
Introduced at last year's annual convention.
That didn't feel like it. That dude wants it done. I saw that in that dude's eyes. That guy's like, I want this shit to weave together. I want this shit done now. That's what that spoke to me. Like when I saw that dude, man, that dude wants to get shit done. He looks tired.
More than 24 of them have been added to the game since, with one of the biggest freight elevators, persistent hangars, and cargo hauling improvements coming within weeks at the time of writing.
Too, man.
I went over this in my stream this past week, and if you want to get into the weeds about this stuff, we have these deep dive sessions every week, or you can watch the summaries over on my second channel, SpaceTomato 2. In this episode, we went over everything that was posited as coming this year back in December, as well as everything discussed on stage at CitizenCon last year. It should be up on the second channel by now. We determined that, unlike previous years, they are actually delivering on the things they're talking about. Now, the reason for this is a few different things that may or may not bore you to certain extents, but also explain a bit of the long development cycle. When this whole project started, the company was very small, a true upstart vibe compared to what we see now. The game engine they wanted to be used, CryEngine, was a very single-player, small-scale toolset that would need an absolute gargantuan effort to make viable to build a space sim. Again, very limited compared to what we see now. Yeah, and to be honest, back then when it all started, the idea of the game was a lot different. Even the CEO, Chris Roberts, admits this.
It's a bit of a Pandora's box that got opened when we realized we had the level of support to really go all the way, because it's a completely different scope of game now than 10 years ago when I got on stage and I was pitching a much more limited, sort of privateer, freelancer online, and a next generation wing commander.
also the legal battle between them and Crytek was also a determining factor that like that took a year out of the development cycle at least, just with the legal issues that they had with Crytek. Imagine trying to develop a game and the engine that you got this on isn't going to actually be able to do what it is that you want it to do, but you still need to use it as its root to develop or evolve into something even more than the engine you started with. And then on top of that, you've got the person who actually is licensing the engine to you having a legal battle with you. Dude, that's at least a year. That's at least a year and a half of time subtracted or added on to this project. You know what I mean? Like, people don't even realize that.
What we're building now
Most
is
of us
a completely different experience in terms of a lot more
that had to be a pain in the
scope
ass.
And possibility, and the idea that you can do and be anything.
You've certainly heard about feature creep when it comes to Star Citizen, and it was a reality for several years there. I would say that aspect of the development mainly died down towards 2018 when 3.0 came out and the persistent universe we play today really started to see better development. But in those early years, there was just so much. The money only continued to pour in as many people wanted to experience the same magic of space games that the 90s brought us. Well, the us that weren't toddlers like myself.
Making me feel old now, SpaceTomato. Stop it.
In these early stages, like many Kickstarters, pledge goals were made. Q&As about possible ideas were made completely public, theory crafting happened right on camera, and the community got...
The theory crafting was the best. A lot of people hated it at the time, man. You know, that Noob got real popular because he said, fuck theory crafting. And, you know, I love Noob. Noob shows up on the stream all the time, but he and I see a little bit different with that. Like, I always thought that theory crafting was really important, talking about that. In fact, the channel blew up because we theory craft the hell out of this game before gameplay was even involved. And a lot of the things that you're playing today in its alpha state, I would say primarily is due to this community speaking up, because they were very direct with us back in the day. And our ideas just flowed out there. So, you know, like, I think theory crafting very important. The antithesis of it was just like factual news, nothing about the theory crafting or game design, but like actually what's happening right now. And Noob blew up that way. That's how Noob blew up. He's like no, his tagline, no bullshit, that's where that comes from. And I remember back in those days when I was just starting out in a very young DG, I was like upset. I was like, why would Noob say something like that, you know? And that narrative was a very strong narrative, and it steered a lot of people towards Noob's channel. And I get it, I understand that, but like, even to this day, I think theory crafting is important because it helps develop the game. It helps steer the game towards a direction in terms of game mechanics and game design. So I was always for like theory crafting. Even at this stage, even at this very late stage of the game, I personally still like theory crafting.
To make the call to expand the game with no end in sight. Obviously, that wasn't possible, and CIG did start to rein things in at some point. But by then, there was a lot to live up to, and it was going to be really difficult to fund all of that development. So of course, as is still true today, the ship sales existed back then, proving a very successful means of funding the game. Without a publisher or previous products to use to fund development, the crowdfunding model stuck, and players could and still can buy ships with real money to help pay for development.
Right.
I advise anybody who is new to the game to pay the minimum $45 in, or $60 if you're feeling extra spicy, and experience everything the game has to offer before making a decision as to what you want to pursue and buying a ship with real money. But back to ye olden days. Tons of promised features, a pickup of a ton of the original engineers that worked on CryEngine at Crytek, ridiculous hype from the community, and the newly solidified ability to create entire explorable worlds made things rough. Management, in my opinion, did not do a good job of prioritizing and triaging the right things for the game to progress, leading to a ton of communication, but not much progress, and what felt like a whole bunch of treading water for quite some time. Until it felt like the teams really started to effectively work together better, only really in the last few years. Nobody was really certain where things were headed, just that the game was being worked on. Now don't get me wrong, at this point people were playing a version of the game.
In those days it was very big dreams. It was very big dreams, we want everything, because that's exactly where we were at. That's where we are at. And I agree with SpaceTomato in terms of management. I was very upset at that particular point in time and very focused on financials, making sure that the business would survive, that they were actually able to make profits and to stay solvent. Because it was an issue very early on. And that was a gripe that I had, is like, it felt very disjointed. It's actually coming together quite nicely, but you can still feel it. And we talked about this last week, about how a lot of the game design and the mechanics that we're seeing don't translate well from what they're thinking of and then coming into the alpha state that we know. And there's a little bit of something that happens, like a lost in translation of what it was that we are imagining or dreaming of, and then what it is that we get. And there's a couple things you can point to in terms of like beams, you know, with salvaging and repair, and everything's beam oriented. That was not really what we wanted, but that's what we got. So that translation into the dream that we thought was going to be, and then how it really is in the game, still kind of has that little bit of that disjointed feeling. And I think that has to do directly with management and the teams directly, but they are getting better. They are getting better at that. What's up? How you doing, Sick? Good to see you.
Jim was seeing pretty clear major changes already, and things were moving along. Features were coming out, ships were releasing, and people were enjoying missions and features.
Good to see you, man.
Look at what we have now. Communication has been dialed in multitudes. Expectations are set much more carefully, and things are only really talked about if the company is pretty confident we'll see them in the next year or two. Updates are releasing with much more usable features that actually make a difference to the game. The necessary features needed are more clearly laid out. The game engine is seeing its first 1.0 version release. The company is now large enough to properly tackle major tasks and initiatives, and the teams have been built out enough to work in tandem to deliver an actual game. Kinda. There's also the fact that Squadron 42, the separate narrative single-player game on a completely different dev branch, has reached what they are calling a feature-complete state, meaning many of the development efforts dedicated to that game over the last several years can be brought back over to Star Citizen to focus more on the MMO. So they say. There are still plenty of problems with the development, but from the positions being filled higher in the company and the things those positions are saying, the maturing of the game's engine and back-end tech like server meshing, the focus on tightening up gameplay and actually making the new player experience not a disaster, there's a lot more to this game now than any year prior. But with all that being said, what is it actually like to play the game?
There's no stability. You know, simple, full stop.
Something else you may have heard about Star Citizen is its stability. It's bad, awful, and frustrating at times. Currently, every instance is running on one server, and with a game that tries to persist everything that happens from weapons dropped to ships destroyed to cargo scattered in space, this causes problems over time. If you want to learn more about the solution of this problem, server meshing, I'll leave the video linked down below. For now, the game is still going to be a pain to play at times, no matter your PC. And this isn't just due to the servers. The optimizations of the game have barely started. Yes, DLSS and FSR were just added to the game, but with the game engine only just reaching 1.0 and the game still not being feature complete, the balance of stability and feature growth are a bit at odds. This can be very anger-inducing for some. If that's you, I highly advise you stay away from this game for now. It's fun, but it's not a stable game, and you'll run into bugs, problems, and game design decisions that don't make sense in a vacuum. Gameplay-wise, 2024 is the best year this game has ever seen. Mining has its problems, of course, but you've got ground, vehicle, and ship-based mining available to you right now, and you can bring along friends for multi-crew or even multi-ship experiences. While there aren't hand-holding missions or tutorials for this just yet, you can just fly out into space and find things to mine whenever you want. Salvage is even more approachable. With less danger involved and plenty of legal and illegal missions to take, you can get dozens of hours of relaxing hull scraping, ship disintegrating, and cargo acquisition across various wrecks and derelict ships in different places. Combat is all the rage. While ship-based bounty hunting gives you easy, quick money and a fairly exciting space combat experience, it's really the reputation progression that makes it work well. Reputation with companies and government entities is one of the main forms of progression in this game, and as you move your way up, you'll receive harder bounties in different scenarios for more pay. The variety is still low, but we've seen master modes, better turret gameplay, new targeting and weapon balances, better ship AI, VFX, and general experience when it comes to ship combat, making this much more fun for players that are looking for a general space combat experience. On the FPS combat side, an experience that I've universally hated for this whole project is now probably my favorite thing to do. This gameplay is also tied to reputation and feels a bit more progressive to me, moving you from small bunkers to large multi-structured facilities. FPS AI has seen improvements, the entire HUD looks different, features like backpack reloading and magazine packing make the experience feel a bit more deep and rewarding. Guns have seen updates across the board, and the new environments are much more interesting to fight in. As long as your server is running fairly well, FPS combat in the game is a lot more fun than it used to be. That being said, you aren't going to find a COD or Tarkov level experience here yet, but it's headed in a good direction and continuing to become more approachable. There are other mission-assisted options in the game too. Maintenance missions have you disposing of waste, research missions could have you deploying a probe, and investigations can be a simple find the lost body in a deep cave or a narrated space station disaster mystery.
Most of the missions are completely unstable and need to be looked at or revamped, and that's my opinion on missions. Like, the first place people are going to go to are the Moby Glass, because the easiest way for somebody to get credits is going into the Moby Glass and getting a contract and accepting the contract. And I can tell you from my personal experiences of just diving in for over 2 weeks trying different missions, which I haven't done in forever, that it was not a good experience. Like, there were many problems. The investigation missions, a lot of the missions rely on the physics grid, which is completely unstable, partially because of the actual physics grid itself, and also server meshing and not having it and glitching and getting stuck to objects. And so, like, investigation missions are even box missions, not working correctly. So there's a lot of things that are highly dependent upon server issues. I get that, but all in all, I think we need to look at that first to keep asses in seats. I think it's really important because a lot of new players are going to go there first. That's the first place they're going to go to, and we got to give them good experiences. You just got to have good experiences. So you got to go through these missions. You got to edit these things. You got to pull out the ones that are bad actors. You got to keep the ones that are, and I don't even care if there's like a couple missions versus like the amount that there are, as long as they're missions that work most of the time and can deal with the server issues, but you're never going to have that. Again, that stability is only going to come with dynamic server meshing, so like Tomato said earlier, if you're going to get frustrated with that type of experience, then you're going to have to wait until you actually start hearing content creators like myself and other players of Star Citizen say, hey, you know what? Things are becoming more stable. At that point, okay, try it out again.
Hey Darnell, it's Racine over at Corporate Ops. Give me a shout back when you clock in.
They are scattered, and there's not much rhyme or reason to the way that they occur, but you'll find plenty of entertainment on offer here. There are even entire racing leagues where you can top the public leaderboards. Cargo hauling is an option through smaller courier missions or free trade on the market where you just buy and haul. But we'll be seeing a big update to that gameplay overall in the next few weeks. Game types like true exploration, farming, base building, crafting, passenger transport, refueling, refining, and engineering are all still in the works, but you can keep up with their development here on the channel. Besides game loops, the general quality of the game has improved recently. New rendering options allow players to more finely tune graphics settings. Cargo physicalization means you can steal, transport, and trade cargo with other people and ships. You can also use these boxes to carry your goods around with you if the backpack is too small and you want to be a mule. The Arena Commander game type allows for offline custom closed servers where you can dogfight, FPS battle, play Star Citizen's own version of gun game, and eventually PvE horde mode, race, or just free flight and practice controlling ships in atmosphere and in space. The replication layer, a new piece of backend tech, has now been added to make players much less likely to experience a full crash out of the game, but rather just continue their progression on a different server when their server does crash. The single-player game, Squadron 42, is approaching content complete, and many of the features and
which, for me, crashes have been happening less. They are still happening. However, I would say, I'd go 50-50. Most of the times I get reconnected, but it takes a long time to reconnect. I don't know if you guys are having the same experiences, but that's the experiences I have. When there's server crashing, I get stuck for a while. I got to wait quite a while to get back into it. And generally speaking, when getting back into it doesn't mean it's always going to be stable.
Development efforts of that game are beginning to show up in Star Citizen, providing a more polished experience. Points of interest are thriving through caves, derelict ships, outposts, small settlements, and the new distribution centers. And above all, the community has exploded. More players have joined the game after 2020 than before, and you'll have no problem finding friends, guides, and groups to join and play with. The official public forums, Reddit, and Discord are all great places to discuss and learn, and
Absolutely
my own org does offer
yeah.
a pretty cool group of people to come and play with. We're always looking for new members to get started in the verse, so I'll leave our Discord server linked down below and the link to apply. And as I covered in one of my recent supporter exclusive videos, which will release publicly a few months from now, the game just keeps growing. Yes, the features might not be what we want. The development doesn't always seem to focus on making the best experience for players right now, and oftentimes it feels like it can take a long time to do things that you just wouldn't expect to. But without fail, every 3 to 4 months, the game sees some kind of an update. We see new features develop, we see things improve, bugs be fixed, and the general design take a step forward. There are slow years and there are fast years. 2024 is definitely a faster year. But overall, players continue to jump in because things continue to move towards a goal. And I think out of every year we've experienced, 2024 feels like one of the biggest signs of that. So if you're looking for a good time to jump into Star Citizen and you're okay with the instability, delayed features, and possibility of the game not heading in the direction you like.
Yeah, Limitless says, I hope they can keep this pace. I do too. I think a lot of what you're seeing and the reason why 2024 is such a good year is because all the work that was done in 2023, when content creators were telling you that no work was being done, that was an absolutely false narrative. A ton of work was being done, and we're reaping the benefits of it now in 2024. So, you know, the thing is yes, I do hope that they keep this pace up. I do hope that they kind of, I like this, like, push it out, get it out there, and then fix it on the back end and keep doing it that way. Now, that can kind of cause problems every once in a while in a development cycle, but I think at where we're at now, a lot of the core tech issues are somewhat better than where we started over a year or so ago. So, you know, I kind of like this. It's like a run and gun style. It seems like the releases are bringing in more and more every new release. We just got news of 3.24. We talked about that patch. That is going to be released soon, hopefully getting us to the point where we have the persistent hangers that I've been griping about that I want so badly, talking about the item banks and also the elevators, the freight elevators. You know, I think that's a really important part of the gameplay. Persistent hangers is a big deal for me. I think when you have a place that you can consistently store all your stuff and watch that accrue and value and always have it there, I think that'll be a big deal. I think you'll keep a lot of asses in seats at that particular point. So 3.24 promising to do that, I believe, from what I watched and what I concluded. But yeah, I hope they keep this pace up to Limitless.
This is a pretty good year to jump back in and try, and there are plenty of free fly events throughout the year where you can jump in without spending any money. You can also keep up with development through weekly sit-down interviews.
Okay, so the rest is SpaceTomato, shilling SpaceTomato. Good for him. Hey, I like the way he presents his content. It is very like got that journalistic kind of news vibe to it. Dig SpaceTomato, friend of the channel, and we'll probably come back again and watch another SpaceTomato video next week. You know, I like the vibe, I like the style, the pacing, the music's good, the editing's great. Keep doing your thing, Tomato. Keep doing it.